Now we're going to talk all things Indiana basketball with an outsider, Zach Osterman from inside Indiana. And Zach, looking at this Indiana team, they were preseason #1, had a setback or two early, but they're really rolling at the right time. Your overall assessment of how the team is performing at this point in the year?
Yeah, you know, I think you and I talked about this. I've talked about this with a number of people probably. It's a cliche, but you play November basketball in November, you play January basketball in January, and right now I think Indiana's playing February basketball. I think that there were some things this team needed to learn about itself. Some of them could be done in wins. Some of them, honestly, probably had to be done in losses. Sometimes you need just sort of that kick or that wake up a little bit, and I think you saw that certainly with Butler, with Illinois, to some extent with Wisconsin as well. And you know, you don't ever want to say it's all coming together, but Indiana really is hitting its stride at the right time, which actually we saw them do a year ago as well, I think is probably fair to say. Obviously this year, though, the expectations are higher and the team is noticeably better.
You look at that win against Kentucky in December of last year, and that was a win that signified that Indiana is back, a very good college basketball program. It was a catharsis on some level for the Indiana fans who had to endure the last 10 years and the ups and downs that went along with it. But on some level, the win at Michigan State was equally significant, best road win in 20 years. And it also signified that this is a team that can win 6 games in a row in March.
Well, and it's a team that can face the kind of adversity. You know, we saw them mount that comeback at NC State last year, and I think that was when people really started to say, well, maybe there's something here, because that was a situation that some previous Indiana teams hadn't responded to in the same way. But to do it at a time, you know, in the building of a top 5 program, in a building that has been wholly unkind to Indiana, against a coach like Tom Izzo, that doesn't just happen. I mean, that's not just luck, and Michigan State certainly made some of its own mistakes, but you know, you always have to strike that balance between who plays, you know, what's good play and what's mistakes. Indiana forced some of those mistakes, and Indiana certainly had some opportunities to make some of its own, and it didn't. It out-executed a Tom Izzo coach team, a very good Tom Izzo coach team, at the Breslin Center, down, what, 4 points in the last minute and a half. I mean, you're right. It's little snapshots like that that make you think that the larger resume can be built to something special in March.
The evolution of Victor Oladipo as a player, modestly heralded recruit coming out of high school, came from a great high school program, wasn't even the best guy on his high school team, to a nice contributor his first couple of years, to being one of, if not the best player in the country. Where does he kind of fit in historically for Indiana players? He's someone, one, who's been a leader. He's a defensive stopper, but he's kind of taken on a life of his own. He's one of the most beloved players I can recall.
Well, and I think that this is certainly a time maybe for beloved players. I think there are going to be a lot of people, a lot of guys on this team that wind up feeling that way, sort of like the ones that stuck around for Pitino at Kentucky. But it's hard not to with Oladipo, and I think that, you know, I'm not sure he'll be remembered in the pantheon of the greatest players, but I would be curious to know where he's remembered as maybe one of the most complete players at Indiana. You talked about he's always had the defense in his pocket. He's improved there. He's not just an athlete who kind of brings energy and doggedness. He's learned how to use those physical tools, I think, to really just become a good defender, technically speaking. And then when you consider how far his offensive game has come, how far he's come rebounding the ball, how good he is at rebounding and defending without fouling, how much he's improved his three-point shooting and his free throw shooting. I mean, I think everyone saw when he came in a player with a lot of athletic potential, a lot of desire to do well, a lot of desire to work hard. But I think it's pretty hard to see, you know, on day 10 of Victor Oladipo's Indiana career, someone who is just this complete. I know the comparisons are terribly premature, but people are talking about him and saying he reminds them of Michael Jordan. I don't know if that's a little bit rushed, but I find that in terms of just how much he's improved over the course of his career, I would bet that it's hard to find a lot of Indiana players, even with the historic, you know, significance of the program, that you can compare him to.
Experience also matters, especially in March and early April. You know, save Kentucky last year. But Christian Watford's a guy who's starting to peak at the right time, and I think on some level he's been an underappreciated player. He's going to end up with about 1,800 points, about 800 rebounds, And that's pretty rare air in the history of Indiana basketball. I understand the context of him scoring a lot early, but he's starting to peak at the right time, getting double-doubles and knocking down big shots.
Well, I think he's talked about it. It's consistency for him. He's been working for probably 2 years now toward this goal of consistency in rebounding, in defending, and just kind of presenting a baseline of expectation every night. I don't think to this point in Big Ten play he has failed to score in double figures. He's improved his rebounding numbers significantly. He's become a primary low post defender for Indiana. And, he's a guy who looked very uncomfortable for his first 2 years because he was playing out of position a lot of the time. He's really more of a 3-4 hybrid, kind of a wing forward type player, and Indiana needed him to go down low just for lack of better options. So it's only been in the last 2 years that he could really kind of grow within the position that's probably most natural to him on the court. And I think that, as he understands also probably a certain sense of urgency coming to the end of his senior year, you are seeing him start to put together all the physical tools when you consider he's 6'9" and can shoot from outside. He's strong and thick-bodied enough to defend, a player like A.J. Hammonds at Purdue or Trevor Mbakwe at Minnesota. And he's also a good enough rebounder to consistently be getting 6, 7, 8, maybe even 10 rebounds a night. So I think it's just kind of starting to come together for him at the right time.
You've watched a lot of Yogi Ferrell, far more than I have. You watched him play in high school. He was not unheralded coming to Indiana. No. McDonald's All-American. But on some level, he's kind of been a little underrated in his importance for this team over the course of the season. And he has really grown and developed into a lockdown defender as well.
I think that's been the biggest part of it. I mean, I think everyone always knew he would defer. Even as a McDonald's All-American at Park Tudor in Indianapolis, he was still a pass-first player. He played in a system with a lot of three-point shooters, and he was perfectly willing to give the ball up to them when they had open looks. So it wasn't really surprising to see him not scoring a lot, not trying to manufacture a lot of his own shots in his freshman year. But that's been the biggest thing for him because Park Tudor plays almost exclusively a 2-3 zone. And so he was going to just kind of need to work on the fundamentals of man defense. He's come along incredibly quickly. It helps that he has good foot speed. He has good lateral quickness. But as he's added strength, he has become a player that you can throw against Keith Appling, that you can, maybe not for a whole game, but you can, turn him against Trey Burke. And he's not just reliable or he's not just useful. He kind of brings his own tools or traits to defense, so it's a different look that a player suddenly has to prepare for as opposed to facing someone like Oladipo or Watford.
Good times for IU basketball. We did this entire interview on the state of the program. Didn't mention the preseason player of the year, a likely first-team All-American. Another 1,000-point scorer, might be the best three-point shooter in the country, and arguably the best sixth man in the country. So good days for Indiana basketball. Zach Osterman, thanks so much for joining us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.